Let's talk about Telltale, guys. You guys remember them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they're being brought back from the dead in name alone, pretty much.
There's a metaphor here.
So yeah, Telltale Games is coming back. I'm just gonna read a little bit of this from Jason Schreier over on Kotaku. It says Telltale Games is back. Well, at least the name is. A group of investors announced plans today to revive the iconic studio, which shut down last September. Although with the company's staff having scattered to the winds, this seems like seems less like a revival and more like one of Clementine's enemies, a zombie, a walker. Sorry.
A walker.
Today, Jamie O'Tilley and Brian Waddle, two men who did not work at Telltale Games, told press that they had secured the rights to the company's names and some of its licenses, and they will be reviving the company in Malibu, California, which is 400 miles away from where it was originally located. So this is a weird story, in my opinion, and I'm interested to get you guys' thoughts on it as well. I believe the licenses that they've retained, at least that I could find, they're going to still have license to Batman and to The Wolf Among Us they've retained, but I think pretty much everything else is lost, and they're going to be re-releasing some of the games that have been since removed from digital storefronts. But when you guys first saw this story, what were your thoughts, and then what have your thoughts become as the day has gone on? Have they evolved at all?
It was shocking to me. I was like, is that still an option? It's been a while. And then once I read the story and found out that it was essentially a name alone, I was like, okay, that makes more sense. And all I can think is that these two guys must have really enjoyed what Telltale was doing, or that's the style of game they want to make, and so they're just trying to capitalize on the name. Because they're essentially going to have to start from scratch. And whatever they do moving forward, it's going to have to be different in some ways from what Telltale was doing, because obviously that model wasn't working, and we've talked about that a bit on this show. I think either this or our old show.
Yeah, my immediate reaction to it was, huh. And then my reaction upon reading more about how Telltale employees could be involved, the philosophy of these two guys and why they've done this and what they aim to do to remedy it. My reaction was,
For the audio listeners, there was a dissatisfied face.
I think it's more complicated than that. There's a lot to this that I really find distasteful is not the right word, but there's a lot to this that I find kind of disconcerting, and then there's some elements to it that I do find could pay off for, I think, for gamers at least, if not the developers that have worked on previous Telltale properties. So I'm certainly now much more kind of distressed by the news on kind of like a philosophical basis, but I think there's some merits to it as well.
Yeah. My initial reaction was, Telltale, that's a name I haven't heard in a while. Like, I was around the same lines as you, Larry, of like, wait, that doesn't make any sense. Everything's scattered to the wind. Like, what is there to save, to salvage? Let me read the background of these guys, and we can join Cody's perplexed. So O'Tilley's background, this is from Schreier's article, is in mobile license development. Powerhouse mobile games like Duck Dynasty and Power Rangers. While Waddle worked at the
license games, by the way.
Yeah. While Waddle worked at the outsourcing company Virtuos and the physics software maker Havoc. So, while Waddle seems to have some development background, is O'Tilley's in development, or is it in the brokering of the licensing deals for those mobile games? Like, I don't know. It seems opportunistic, but in the least opportunistic way. Like, they bought a shell. I imagine they did not pay much for this name for the remaining licenses. And so maybe in that sense, they struck while the iron was the hottest, because I imagine buying Telltale as things were going under would have been insanely expensive. But it seems to just be like they sat back and were like, oh, Telltale's known for making licensed products. We have experience with licensed products. Like, let's swoop in and take advantage of this. But then you read more about it and the structure of it, and it really seems like you're buying KFC, but not getting the secret recipe, the Colonel's secret recipe, you know? And it's just like, what is Telltale without the people that made the games? And so, but I did want to point out one other thing. Polygon spoke to O'Tilley, who told them, quote, that some workers from the original Telltale games will be offered freelance roles with full-time positions possible in the future, end quote. And just from a PR perspective, the optics of that look fucking terrible.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we just bought the name of this company that you gave your blood, sweat, and tears to for years. If you want to come back and work on a freelance basis, we might think about giving you a full-time job if things start to work out for us. Like, it just seems shitty.
It would look even worse if there had been a recent like string of stories of companies like not treating workers well in the games industry.
Yeah, especially freelance workers, contract workers.
It's just also in all of those stories that Larry's saying we haven't seen. A large aspect of them is that there's a culture of trying to profit off of people's work based on how passionate they are about their work.
Mm-hmm.
That's what this is. It's them saying, we know you guys love these properties and we know you love working at Telltale. Come back and try to relive those glory days, even though you're only going to get paid on a freelance basis, even though you're probably going to work full-time hours. Come on back.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just kind of disgusting. It's that it's a revivified corpse with some still shell of humanity left in it.
Yeah. In the Discord, Circle Hunter said Cody's reaction was like, and posted the Buzz Lightyear.
Yeah,
but I've got to join you, Cody.
Oh, there we go.
Is that a pipe?
Yes.
Gotta have it when I'm perplexed.
For our audio listeners, it's not a tobacco pipe. It is a crack pipe.
When we attended Johnson Bible College, I used to walk around in the halls wearing this pipe hanging out of my mouth. And one of the RAs came to me and was like, you can't have that. It's tobacco paraphernalia.
And you were like, correction, it is crack paraphernalia.
I was like, I'm super asthmatic. I'd literally die if I smoked it for real. But he still wouldn't let me use it.
Yeah. I don't know. There's not a ton to say about this story, I don't think. Just on the surface, it's a shitty move that most people aren't going to go beyond the headline of just Telltale is back to look into what this is. They're going to just assume that all of the properties and games that they loved are coming back. And other people were like, well, I'm not going to get back into Telltale until I see that they're going to have a new engine. I'm like, it's going to be a new fucking everything from them. Like, it is, they bought the name. They bought the right to the name and a couple of the licenses that they have. Like, I don't think there's very much else that's coming with this. But I do want to talk about people's just weird attachments to brands and games. And we've had this discussion a little bit on this show. More in talking about just like brand apologists. But Jason Schreier sent out this tweet at the time of this news broke. He said, quote, lots of excitement this morning over a headline saying that Telltale Games is back, but the reality is that some people who didn't actually work at Telltale Games have bought the rights to a name. Brands don't make video games, end quote. And I just think that that's a super important point for us to remember. Like,
super important.
A super important point for us to remember. And it's the same thing that happens when we start thinking about, like, I think about BioWare now. you know, and where we are with BioWare today, post Anthem, post Mass Effect Andromeda, and people want to compare whatever we're going to get next from BioWare to what we got from BioWare a decade ago at this point. And it's like, BioWare doesn't make the games. The people at BioWare make these games. And the same thing is happening here with Telltale. And like, gaming is just strange in this attachment that we have to brands and not the recognition of the people behind the games.
Yeah, it's 100%. I think we've talked either around or at this point, like you said, for a while. And I think it's a problem in pop culture writ large, especially, and this we can loop in the conversation and the hubbub that happened around Spider-Man, Sony, and Marvel and Disney this past week, because this is sort of similar. There is an inherent, not inherent, but there's a power that brands hold over the people who are in their sway, and it's convincing you that a corporation has a personality and a face, and that the products under them have a personality and the face. That's what a brand is. It's about giving life to something that is amorphous.
Mm-hmm.
But those things aren't just created by like, especially with games, there's been a perception that these things are just like created by elves in a workshop. They tinker away and then they release these games out into the wild. We can enjoy them. But as we've learned, there are real people who suffer real mental, physical, psychological costs making these games. And we often don't recognize that to our and their detriment.
Mm-hmm.
And so, exactly as you said, and as Jason Schreier said, like a studio is only as good as the people under it, and a brand is only as powerful as the games that are made by those people. And so when all you have is the shambling corpse of that studio without anything inside of it, it kind of loses its power, but it still maintains kind of like the outward appearance of it. And so people are still drawn to it. It's an odd dynamic, and it does show the power of brands. Just like everybody was quick to jump to Disney's defense, despite the fact that Disney is a fucking monopoly at this point in an industry. It's the largest film studio that has ever been around in history. People are jumping to its defense like it needs it.
Guilty.
Sorry, this has been nagging at me all week. And
No,
we don't
Luke
do a movie
called me.
podcast. We don't do a movie podcast, so I just wanted to address it in a roundabout way.
Luke called me and was like, this is like Disney's fault, right? I'm like, yeah, but Sony ruined other Spider-Man movies. I want to be.
Yeah. It's just public negotiation between two massive corporations. But
Well, and we're taught from a very early age, like, not just in games, but like, Larry, you're a fan of WVU football, right?
Yeah. I mean, not super, but if I'm going to watch football, that's what it's going to be.
But you're a fan, and I'm a sports fan as well. Cody, you're not as much into sports, right? But every 4 years at WVU, it's a whole new set of players, right? Mm-hmm. And it doesn't fucking matter because they've got that logo on the side of their helmet, and you're going to tune in and you're going to root for them to win the same way I do for Florida State every single year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Every 4 years, it's different people. Take my favorite basketball team, remove every player that plays on it, put them on another team, and just ship in new people. I'm still just going to root for the jersey. Like, we're programmed this way from a very early age that, like, it's just easier for us to attach ourselves to this overarching idea than the people that are underneath it. And I don't know. I think we need to realize that about ourselves.
Even the current state of politics for a lot of people, it's which symbol am I behind? I don't have time to understand and think through the nuances of every issue. Let me just pick a team.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the power of brands and the power of marketing. I think it's what's different about games to me, and I've been thinking about this a lot. There was a very interesting book that I read while I was in my anthropology program about the culture of brands and brands as cultural symbols. And for games, I sort of see a lot of this, but enhanced, because not only is it in our houses, like TV, like television shows and movies, but we are we are actors in it. We tell ourselves that we're actors in it, and we're actors in it for extended periods of time, like for some people hundreds of hours. And that amount of engagement with something like WoW, where you've played it for 10 years, you have memories, distinct memories attached with that, and those get attached not just to the game but to the Blizzard logo that you see every time you've launched that game in your browser for 10 years. Games just have there's such a intimate attachment we have with it that I think it enhances a lot of the stuff that is felt by Marvel fanboys, Sony fanboys, the few that there are. Whatever. I just think games are such a powerful tool, and sometimes that might be to our detriment to understanding the work that goes into them.
Mm-hmm. And then the final thing I just want to mention here, getting back to the Telltale thing, like, I'm curious as to the quality of these games when they start to roll out, and the strategy behind these games as they start to roll out. I don't have tremendous confidence in either of those things, so and I don't think there's much we can do outside of just speculating on it, because we don't know these individuals that are taking over. But I don't see too many former Telltale employees clamoring to jump back onto that ship following the way that things ended, especially on a freelance capacity.
It seems that some people have already been contacted and have expressed interest based on tweets from some Telltale employees I saw. But yeah, I'm also kind of worried about, because a large part of the problem with Telltale was mismanagement and like poorly managed scheduling, poorly managed deadlines, and for perhaps one of these people who doesn't really have a lot of experience in development, I'm worried that those same mistakes will be repeated, despite the fact that they say they will try not to. Also, the fact that they indicated that they're not trying, they really like the binge watching model worries me, because I think a large part of the reason Telltale didn't release everything at the same time and release it episodically was to alleviate the crunch that would happen despite it happening anyway. But we'll see.